Alright, hello and welcome everyone to another EDH Deck Tech. This will be the last one in the series I've been doing over the course of the last 3 days. I'm in my final term of school and this has been a good break from work in between. This last commander is actually for Pauper Commander. The version of Pauper Commander I play, you can use either commons or uncommons. I'm sort of vague. It seems to be that you start with 35 life and 18 commander damage is what is needed to kill someone, because the format is a little grindier due to the fact that everything is a common. People have been implementing these rules to speed up the game slightly. Games still generally run longer. This is a very new format, but one that I am a huge supporter of. I think for casual players and people getting into Magic, this is a wonderful way to learn. I also think that it's a lot easier to keep power levels in this format similar. The one problem I have with EDH is you kind of have to make EDHs 4 different power levels so that you can show up to a table and actually be able to engage in a good game with your friends. If you show up with a deck that's too good, generally you're going to win the game if they don't have answers, in 15 minutes, maybe sometimes less. And I just don't think that that is as enjoyable as it could be. What I really love about Magic is the whole process of assembling an army, making decisions on trades, etc. I find that Pauper is closer to like a souped up draft format in that you're using all your basic building blocks of a Magic game. You can't really circumvent the natural progression of the game through combos and other things. You really are forced to play it out and to think about things like the combat phase. In particular, every turn it counts for so much more when all you're really trying to do is maximize the amount of value you have with cards that just aren't as efficient as you would get normally in Commander. And it's a totally different card pool. I mean, you discover so many more cards, etc. So before we get into it, I just wanted to preface it with saying I'm a huge supporter of this format. I've had a lot of fun playing it. And I think anyone who's starting out, this is a great way to start. Just get your friends together and say, hey, let's do Pauper Commander. You can make a deck for around 20 bucks, a good 100 card deck, which is the price of, one quality rare these days, which is kind of crazy. So our commander here is Woo Scout. This is sort of Pauper's version of a Vendilion Clique in a weird sort of way. It's a one horsemanship, so it can only be blocked by creatures with horsemanship. As you guys may know, I really love Portal 3 Kingdoms. I think it's a super cool set, despite the fact that a lot of the cards are just horrible in it. But when he comes into play, you are able to look at your opponent's hand. So this is a Pauper Voltron deck with a lot of counter magic. What we can do with the Woo Scout is we can return him to our hand with other abilities when we're trying to save him from removal effects, and then replay him for 2 again and check in on our opponent's hand. Otherwise, in heads up, he's very, very strong. Second turn, you get to see exactly what you're going up against. You can plan out how your counter spells are going to line up with what they're going to be playing, and I've had a lot of fun playing this general. So let's go through. I'm going to start with the Voltron package. This is a pretty neat package. I'm quite proud of it. Yeah, it's essentially what we're trying to do is we're guaranteed to get in, right? So we just want to hit for as much as we can, and I've built a package around doing that for as cheap as possible. So Prying Hook, or Prying Blade, sorry, is a terrific card because we'll play it first turn, second turn we'll play our Scout, and then third turn we can swing, produce a token after equipping it, so we'll have 1 mana open and 1 treasure open after we've equipped and swung, which is counter magic. So turn 3 we can have our general down, we will have looked at their hand, and we have potentially access to counter magic or a bounce spell. So this has been an all-star in the deck, for sure. Then we have the Darksteel Axe, which has to be common. Yeah, it's a common in Iconic Masters, the most recent Iconic Masters. So don't be fooled when you see any of these uncommon symbols. Essentially for Pauper, it has to be printed as a common at any point in the game's history, and you can use it in the format. So yes, recently reprinted as a common. This is exactly like Bone Splitter, except that it costs 1 more to equip, and it's indestructible, so they can't really remove it. There's the Bone Splitter. You guys just saw in my last deck, I've been playing around with these axes a lot, and they're especially strong in Pauper, especially on a general, turning him into a 3-1. We have to do this as fast as possible. The Woo Scout by himself cannot get there with commander damage, so a lot of this deck is actually tutoring up a Trinket Mage to guarantee we get this on our guy as fast as possible and start making hits that count, because we are closing it out through commander damage, so it's mandatory that we have one of these pieces. Adventuring Gear is actually the best equipment in the deck and what the deck revolves around. We can run all 3 of the panoramas that let us search for an island, which means that we get double triggers on our Adventuring Gear. I still need to add a Evolving Wilds. I'm just adding the Evolving Wilds to this deck. I won't be adding the Terramorphic Expanse. I've got to play around with the mana base a little more. But we have all the panoramas. The reason the panoramas are prioritized over things like Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds are because you can tap them for mana the turn they come into play. And holding up counter magic in this deck is very important. So I generally would like to play a land that will be useful the turn it is played. And then I can hold the crack ability for when Adventuring Gear is in play, and sometimes I can get up to 7 damage per swing with my Woo Scout if I'm able to combine this with the following card, which is the Explorer's Scope. So because blue also has cards on the common slot like Ponder, Preordain, and Brainstorm, it's a lot easier for us to filter and hit our lands with Explorer's Scope so that we're only drawing gas, and once the Adventuring Gear is in play, that's also giving our creature +2/+2. So again, this is one of the reasons why I like Pauper so much, is because you're really forced to think about what are the tiny value engines I can build to get as much utility out of everything I'm playing. So Adventuring Gear and Explorer Scope are also thematically amazing. I mean, we're the Woo Scouts, so we've got to go into foreign territory and figure things out. So, you know, with our spyglass and our gear, we're well equipped. True Faith Sensor, this is really, you know, pushing it to the limit in Pauper in terms of the best equipment that were available to me. Because Woo Scout is a human, he'll actually get +2/+1 from this equipment, as well as being able to block, because he'll have vigilance, so he won't be tapping when he attacks. And it also gets us up to that 3 power, which is pretty key for minimizing the number of swings we need to close out the game. The last equipment is a Volshock Morningstar, just generically decent card, especially in Pauper, you know, not overcosted in any way, quite fair. Then we run a Mind Stone in the artifacts. This is actually, yeah, as you can see, I actually picked up the Pauper version of it where it's been printed as a common. I include this in most of my EDHs, and I'm happy to have it here. So that's the artifacts, very small package, and all just trying to soup up the scout. Moving into the creatures, we actually have a wizard theme. This deck is quite wizard heavy. It's because of the information dealer, which you'll see coming up, which lets us just dig and look for our combo pieces. This whole deck is just trying to get out Woo Scout, hold up counter magic, and have those equipments on him to close out the game. So Delver of Secrets, Pauper Classic, human wizard until he flips, then he becomes a human insect. So we will be able to use the True Faith Sensor, but it will no longer count as something for our information dealer. Sage of Epicure just lets us look at the top 4 on our first turn if we're lucky, and put them back in any order and get to our combo pieces. A Spellstutter Skite. This is actually going to be removed. I too often am only playing this for 1. The only other fairies in the deck are a Pestermite and a Cloud of Fairies. So I'm going to put in a Mistblade Shinobi. The ninjutsu abilities work extremely well with the Woo Scout. I have the Ninja of Deep Hours, but now I do need the Mistblade Shinobi in hindsight. So this hasn't been getting the value I wanted. It's a very strong Pauper card, but the ninjutsu ability is particularly good because we'll get the trigger. I mean, our general is guaranteed to get in. We then pay the ninjutsu cost, return our general to our hand, and have that creature coming in with its ability triggering once they deal combat damage to the opponent, and then are able to replay our Woo Scout for 2 and look at their hand again and figure out if there's something we need to hold up counter magic for the following turn. So great card, but just not worth it in the deck at this point after play testing for several weeks. This is the All-Star Wizard, my favorite pusher man in Magic the Gathering, the information dealer. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of wizards you control, or in play, sorry. It can actually be wizards your opponents control as well, which is pretty crazy, and then you put them back in any order. So very, very great dig outlet, and yeah, I just love the card in general. Omen Speaker, 2 to cast 1/3. When it enters, I get a scry 2. Pretty simple. We just want to dig, make sure we're getting to those equipment as fast as possible. Because like I said, if the Woo Scout is not equipped, we are controlling the board and looking for the pieces, because we really can't close out the game otherwise. It's kind of crazy. Augur Bolus, another staple for Pauper. We run more spells than creatures for sure, so generally we are going to get some value off of this, and it's a nice bounce target as well. Then we have the Vidalcan Ether Mage. This is going to be used to search up the Trinket Mage, which is going to be used to search up our equipment. So we can wizard cycling it for 3 mana, and that's pretty much why it's in the deck. Seagate Oracle, another staple. Yeah, you play him, you get to play Sleight of Hand, essentially. He replaces himself, and he's a wizard, so he counts towards the information dealer. There's our All-Star Trinket Mage, one of my favorite cards. Debatably could be the commander of the deck. I probably will make a Trinket Mage version of this build at some point, just because I love the card so much. But I also love, Portal 3 Kingdoms, so I went with the nifty utility of being able to look at people's hands and also getting to run the Trinket Mage for maximum value. Archaeomancer, this deck has all the things we can run at the common level that are creatures that will return instants or sorceries from graveyard to hand, just because otherwise you risk the chance of gassing and not being able to draw enough cards to stay in the game. And in a control deck, it's hard, but it's extremely important. So the Archaeomancer is a great target. The Scrivener from Odyssey is another great one. Now, his creature type technically is townsfolk on the card, but in reality, because of the Oracle text, he is in fact a human wizard. So the same ability as the Archaeomancer. It's a 5 to cast 2/2 instead of a 4 to cast 1/2. The value isn't great on it, but it's working with the information dealer. It's a human as well, so we can put on the True Faith Sensor, and we're getting another card from graveyard to hand. So overall, I just wanted to run it. There's a Cloud of Fairies. It's a free flyer. It's able to get in and finish the game with the equipment. If our opponent is on low life, we're playing a multiplayer game and they've been chipped down by other means. But yeah, I'm a little on the fence about this. This may actually come out of the deck. We'll see how it goes. I might be able to find a better flyer or another piece of control to fill this slot. Augury Owl is fantastic in Pauper. 2 for a 1/1 flying is nice, but Scry 3 is just great. A lot of the other abilities with these types of cards, these like 2-drop birds, all revolve around looking at the top X cards and then putting them back in any order. The reason I prefer Scry is because if they're garbage, you just throw them on the bottom of your deck and hope you hit something better on the next draw. Drift of Phantasms. This isn't bad actually to just play out in certain situations because it's a 0/5 flying, so it can block anything. High power creatures in Pauper are overcosted, so they're generally going to be paying like 6 or something to play a creature that's going to get through this. Otherwise, it is a 3 to cost transmute, so it can go get Trinket Mage, which is exactly why it's in the deck. Tandem Lookout is actually one of the best cards in the deck because we use this Soul Bond ability with Woo Scout, and we're going to just be guaranteed to draw those cards every single turn. And Tandem Scout can also get in itself to draw us a card. Yeah. Pestermite, again, another card on the fence. It's good. You can surprise people with the flash. You can save yourself from getting attacked by playing it pre-combat and tapping one of their attackers. Really not a bad card at all. I'm moving away from this fairy package because of the spell stutter, so I may be experimenting more. We'll see if it stays or not, but it's one of the only cards that I'm sort of on the fence about. What is this? I gotta turn this one around. Elgod Shieldmate. I hope I said that right, Elgod. Anyways, it's another soulbound creature. This is one of the few ways we can give our creatures hexproof in Pauper. So really we're playing this turn 4. Woo Scout will already be in play. It'll be hexproof, unblockable, essentially, with the horsemanship, and we don't have to worry about using our control spells or counter magic specifically to save the Woo Scout. We can use it instead for other value targets that they're going to try and resolve. So I just figured this long term, in a longer game, this was really worth it. And this is a great target with the True Faith sensor because it turns into a 4-cast 4/4 Vigilance. So the math kind of added up with that one since it's a human. Ninja the Deep Hours, this is our other ninjutsu after we get in this Mistblade Shinobi that I was talking about. So essentially we swing in turn 3 with our Woo Scout. We pay 2 for the ninjutsu. We draw a card. And the following turn we can replay our Woo Scout, check out their hand again, and see what we want to hold up. It'll be turn 4, we'll have 2 mana open, and that's really, as soon as we have 2 mana open in this deck, we're going to be messing with their board state. Mnemonic Wall, just a staple. I mean, this is actually played in regular EDH a lot. 5 for a 0/4 defender, and we get an instant sorcery back from our graveyard to hand when it comes into play, so just good value. Prescient Chimera is very cool, actually. I was happy I found this card just milling through my collection. It's great in Pauper just for all the value it nets you. There is a combo in this deck, which I will bring up when we get to it, that revolves around the Chimera. But essentially it's 5 for a 3/4 flying, and whenever we cast an instant or sorcery we get a scry 1. So we just gotta dig, make sure we're drawing things that we actually need to deal with the current board state. There's a Muldrifter. Again, don't mind the uncommon symbol. It has been printed as a common, so it's totally legal in the format, and just a good card. 2 enchantments. Rhystic Study is a common. Can you believe it? I know. Yeah, great taxing effect. Bigger games, this is definitely where it shines. 1v1, we're actually generally holding up our mana for counter magic or bounce, etc. So it's not as useful, but still good, worth including. And Ophidian Eye, this is an enchant creature for 3 that whenever the creature deals damage to a player or an opponent, we get to draw a card. But you can play it with flash, which is nice. So you can play it you can hold up your counter magic. If there's nothing you wanted to counter, you can play it at the end of their turn, and then the next turn come in with your Woo Scout and start netting a ton of value. We really want to play off this unblockability, pseudo-unblockable that the Woo Scout is bringing to the table. So now we're going to go through the spells. Blue has some amazing options at the common level. So we've got Careful Study, we've got Brainstorm, we've got Ponder. These are all the draw spells. We've got Preordain, we've got Impulse. It's top 4. Put 1 in the hand, rest on the bottom. We've got Repulse. Bounces a creature and nets us a card. Well, replaces itself. Then we have Frantic Search, Deep Analysis. This is one of the cards that really keeps us in the game. It draws enough that we don't mind paying the full 6 to get the 4 if we have to. We have Foresee, which is very nice with the Scry 4. We have Gush. This is a great way of consistently hitting our land drops to enable the adventuring gear every turn. That is one of the main reasons I've included Gush in this deck. It can function on a low curve, and just simply having the ability to bounce 2 lands, which I can then replay to activate the adventuring gear, adds a lot. And then the final draw spell is a Treasure Cruise with the Careful Study, with the Frantic Search, and all of the cantrips. This is very easy to resolve, and drawing 3 is one of the ways that we, stay in the game. Moving on to the counter magic package, we have an Intervene, which is just a great way to protect a creature for 1 mana. We have a Condescend, very flexible, and the Scry 2 is wonderful. We have a Negate, a Miscalculation, great early game counter. Later game we can cycle it, so I like the options on that one. We have a Daze to catch them off guard. Again, bounces a land if we play it for free, which we can replay to activate our Avenging Gear landfall trigger. We have a Muddle the Mixture. Muddle the Mixture's Transmute can actually go find the Vodalkin Ether Mage, which can go find the Trinket Mage. So there's a whole line of play if we're very desperate to get a equipment onto the Woo Scout. We have a Deprive, again on theme. It's a counterspell that bounces a land so that we can replay for the Adventuring Gear. We have our straight up counterspell. I love the art on that one. We have our mandatory Flavor Win Remove Soul, which is the preemptive strike. It's essentially, it counters a creature spell. Yeah. We have an Exclude, which replaces itself. Again, only creatures. We have Fairy Trickery, which is a great budget counterspell. It counters a non-fairy spell and exiles it, which is really nice. We have a Cancel, which is just a 3 to cast counterspell. Countervailing Winds. I really like this card. You saw, again, this is the cantrips, the other counterspells, and the Frantic Search and Careful Study all contribute to make this playable turn 3. If we play this turn 3 and we have 2 or 3 cards in our graveyard, chances are they can't pay the tax, and we resolve countering their spell. So this has been a really good addition, and if it's ever irrelevant, it's got the cycling. So it's been really nice. Calculated Dismissal is also good. We almost always have Spell Mastery, so being able to counter something in Scry 2 is really nice. Even if we're having a counter battle, we have multiple counter spells, leading off with this and at least getting to Scry 2 and taxing their mana base so they can't follow up with other spells is nice. I've also enjoyed seeing this one. Rewind was actually originally a common, if you can believe it. I don't really get it, but I'm happy it is, because we can run it in here, and this is how you start off countering. This is the first one you play, it'll untap 4 lands, and then you're just ready to keep countering and bouncing and messing with their board state. So speaking of bouncing, here's the small bounce package. This is all disruption. Again, you can see we're trying to squeeze as much value as we can out of every single spell because it is Pauper. So this one returns a tapped creature to its owner's hand, so if they attack us, unless it has vigilance, we can bounce it in response, and we get a Scry 1. Then we have Into the Royal, which we can kicker so that it replaces itself, which is great value. We have a Boomerang, great for bouncing lands to establish an early board state and net a lot of value out of our advantage. More so for 1v1, that type of play. Snap, bounces a creature, we get on tap 2, just a nice card. Here is Hands of Binding. So this is what I was talking about earlier, which combos with the Prescient Chimera. So what this does is it'll tap a creature, and that creature won't untap during its controller's next untap step, but then we put it on Woo Scout. So we exile the spell, and every time Woo Scout connects with an opponent, we get to cast a copy of the spell. So since we're technically casting the copy every time, if Prescient Chimera is in play, then we get a Scry 1 every time, on top of locking up their creatures. So this is a really, really strong card in the deck, and a great combo. There's another Cipher card, I think it's called Puppet Strings or something like that, but it lets us tap and untap permanents. That one's not in here. I debatably could put it in. I'll experiment a little more with the control package. I think it may end up finding its way in here, but it just wasn't a guarantee to include, and this one definitely was. Telekinesis. I'm very fond of this card. It's a very old card. It's kind of the best tap down for 2, in my opinion. It's 2 blue, instant speed. You prevent the combat damage a creature would deal, and you tap it, and it stays tapped for the next 2 untap phases are skipped. So it skips an additional untap phase, and you can allow them to attack first and then play this card, because it says right on it it'll prevent the combat damage they would deal normally. So you don't have to do it pre-combat. It's great with politics, etc. No one can sort of bullshit you and pretend they're not going to attack you and then end up doing it. And yeah, tapping them down for 2 turns generally buys us enough time that our Woo Scout starts doing damage that they're starting to get worried about. And the last 2 spells before we get into the lands, there's a Ghostly Flicker. You saw a lot of these creatures are ETB based, so this does a lot of work. Oh, sorry, last 3 spells. A Rushing River, which I just really like. It's a neat old card. I think this is like Blue's version of Harrow. You can bounce a permanent for 3 at instant speed, but you can also sack a land to bounce an additional non-land permanent if you really need to. The reason I chose these cards is because we can't actually deal with enchantments unless we counter them. So having bounce specifically for any non-land permanent is more important in this deck than it would be otherwise. And the last spell is Will of the Naga. Again, we fill up our graveyard very quick because of our large spell base, and so being able to delve and cast this for 2 at instant speed by exiling some spells, tap down 2 creatures and having them not untap, just stalls out the game, so we can get in enough swings to kill with Woo Scout. I'll very quickly go through the land base. We've got our Esper Panorama, our Grizzix Panorama, and our Bant Panorama to just get double triggers out of our adventuring gear. Then we have a Lonely Sandbar that we can cycle. We have a Skyline Cascade, which can keep a creature tapped down, just buy us more time. And then finally, an Halimar Depths, because looking at the top 3 is just nice at the beginning of the game. After that, it's just a ton of white border basics. I wanted to do white border because I've never played a white border commander. Well, I have once in the past. I played one of the old Portal 3 Kingdoms, Zhang He, which was a fun deck, but I wanted to theme my lands around this whiteboard and really embrace the fact that we're doing Pauper. So yeah, that's the deck. It's been a lot of fun. I highly recommend Pauper Commander. I really can't recommend it enough. It's just, in my opinion, it's more sort of classic Magic on a budget, and it really forces you to think and be creative and be original. And yeah, it's a longer game for sure, but the way combat and the turns flow and the politics work out is just more enjoyable to me, honestly. I love playing some strong EDH, but this has been a nice switch up, and I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some good ideas and are hopefully interested in the format. Go check it out. There's a few unofficial rule sites. Be flexible with your friends. I think this format is all about being inclusive and just having a good time with what's lying around. So yeah, that's it for today. Take care. I'll have some more videos in the future, but school's picking up, so I'm going to take a little break. All the best and bye, guys.